Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I am going to be reviewing Orphan First Kill. Now, as usual, this video review is going to contain spoilers, as I don't really often do spoiler-free reviews. I don't really see the point of them, as you can't really do a proper review, in my opinion, unless you're delving into the full nitty-gritty. So just be warned guys, there will be spoilers, and I will be talking about a huge twist that happens in this movie. If you're okay with spoilers, then keep watching. But if you don't want anything spoiled for you in this movie, then I would advise clicking off this video straight away. I've also put spoilers in the video thumbnail and in the video title, so I think I've made it clear about the spoilers. Okay, so Orphan First Kill is a prequel to the movie that came out way back in 2009, and what this movie shows us is how Esther, or Lena as that's her original name, breaks out of the San Institute and then passes herself off as a missing child. A missing child who has been missing for 4 years, called Esther, and this is how Lena ends up having the name Esther. The family who lost the real Esther live in America, and it's not long before they are reunited with who they think is their daughter, who is now 10 years old. But of course it's not the real Esther. Now first things first, let's talk about Isabel, who plays Esther in these movies. She is truly outstanding in the role. You can tell that the actress has aged because, let's face it, it's been around 13 years since the last movie, but I think they did a great job in trying to make her look young and using a body double of a real little girl in the long shots. And I can remember when I first saw the trailer and I noticed this, and it didn't bother me then and it didn't bother me watching this movie. Let's talk about some of the characters. So we have the mum called Trisha, the dad called Alan, and the brother called Gunnar. Now I think the casting for the family is great. I really felt for the dad in this movie because he seemed to be the only real good guy, which I will talk about in just a moment. Now, the mum Trisha is great in her role, and the brother Gunnar, I feel he's some sort of arrogant, and I think it's because maybe he's been spoilt maybe all through his childhood, and it shows early on in the movie. Now, the very first part of this movie is fantastic. We see Esther, aka Lena, in the San Institute, and this woman who is about to start working in this institute for the first time. I think she comes in for some sort of induction day. Anyway, she learned straight away that Lena is one of their most dangerous patients in the institute. Now, I loved Esther's escape. I love the way how she manipulates a guy who works there to come into her room, to then which she brutally kills. She then makes her way through the institute and uses another dangerous patient to get out through the doors, where Esther escapes in the new worker's car. It's very clever, and I just loved it. When Esther is finally taken back to America to be introduced back with her family, the film kind of does more of the same stuff that happens in the first movie. I mean, for example, Esther, she's in love with her dad, and the mum is in the way. You then have the older brother who is a little bit of a prick towards Esther. There's also a private detective guy who's been employed by the family to find Esther when she first went missing 4 years ago, and he comes to see how Esther is, and it's not long before he works out that Esther isn't the real Esther after all, and he ends up meeting a grisly end. Now, I'm about to talk about the massive twist in this movie, which happens around the halfway mark of the movie. Now, it's a twist that I did not see coming, and it totally changed everything. It changed the game in the movie. So, we learned that Mother Trisha and Brother Gunnar already know that Esther, the one that's now living in their home, is not the real Esther, not the mother's daughter. The real Esther, who went missing when she was 6 years old, was murdered by her brother Gunnar, and Mother Trisha helped cover it all up and hide the body. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And this is why I said at the start of this video that the dad seems to be the only good guy in this movie, because the dad, he has no idea that his real daughter is actually dead. It's so twisted, but I was like, yes, this has just got a lot more interesting. Now, the mother ends up telling Esther this whole story and basically tells her that nobody can find out about any of this, and that the only reason why the mum has stayed quiet is because of the dad, her husband. He's over the moon that he thinks he's got his daughter back. It's so crazy because once you learn about this twist, all of a sudden you end up rooting for Esther, which I never thought would happen. The movie then turns into a bit of a cat and mouse game between Esther and the mum and the brother Gunnar. Now, there is a moment where the mum and brother are planning on killing Esther again, and they try to drug her food, but Esther, she ends up taking her food upstairs and she ends up feeding it to the pet rat that's living in the wall, and of course the rat ends up dead. So Esther decides to get up early and make breakfast for everyone, and she ends up putting the dead rat into the mum's breakfast shake. I was like, whoa, touche, Esther. Once again though, the dad is completely oblivious to what is happening all around him. Things get real crazy in the third act, and it's pretty much psychopaths against psychopaths, and you are rooting for Esther. The mum really turns into a crazy bitch by the end of this movie. Like, she literally doesn't care how Esther dies as long as she dies, because initially, the mum and the brother, they were either going to try and make it look like suicide, or Esther was just going to conveniently end up going missing again. But by the end of the movie, the mum just doesn't care how Esther dies. There's a great scene that I just loved, and it's the moment just after Esther has run away from the mum and the brother. She then jumps in the car and drives off. She then turns on the radio, and the song "She's a Maniac, Maniac" starts to play, which is truly fitting for Esther and the situation that is currently happening. And Esther then just puts on some sunglasses and she lights up a cigarette, and she's just looking so cool. I just love this scene in the movie. And I mean, it's just so bizarre how, like, in the first movie, Esther was the evil one where we all wanted her to get her comeuppance, but in this movie, we were rooting for her to get away and to kill this bloody family. It's such a clever route that they took this movie, in my opinion. Rather than just mimic more of the same of the first movie, which is what I thought was happening until we got to that twist. I mean, they decided to try something different, and for me personally, it worked. Esther was a lot more brutal in this movie with her kills, and I think because Isabel is an older actress in this movie, she could get away with doing these more brutal things, whereas in the first movie, she was indeed a little girl. When Esther kills the brother, I was actually cheering because the brother was one sick prick in this movie. I mean, I think he was 16, which would have meant that he would have been 12 years old when he killed his real sister, the real Esther. So he got his just desserts in the end when Esther ends up shooting a crossbow at him and then proceeds to stab him a crazy amount of times. Now, as we all know, if you've seen the trailer, the house ends up burning down. But there is just one more final showdown between Esther and the mother, because these two end up in the mother of all fight scenes in the kitchen, where they are literally throwing each other around and over the work counters. It was a good fight scene. They eventually end up on the roof while the house is burning down, and they both end up dangling on the edge of the roof, and then it's up to the dad to save them. And do you know what, guys? The dad at this point is still completely oblivious to what has been happening. Now, when he manages to get to them on the roof, he grabs Esther's hand first, and then the mum, she loses her grip and falls to her death. When the dad pulls Esther back up, he starts to hug her, and then he starts to squeeze her face, and then all of a sudden, Esther's false teeth fall out of her mouth, and this is when the dad realizes that Esther is not Esther, and Esther ends up pushing him off the roof as well, killing him instantly. Now, when the movie ends, Esther is of course the only survivor, standard, and she is then placed in an adoption home, which of course leads us on to the next movie with Kate and John, which is the 2009 film. In my opinion, this film was flipping amazing. Are there any negatives to this movie? Well, as prequels go, it's a really good prequel, and I'm not normally a fan of prequels. I don't normally even bother watching them, but this one impressed me. But is it as good as the first movie? No, of course it's not, but it's not a flop by any means. This is still a fantastic movie, but what I think you have to remember is that in the first movie, that, you know, the thing that featured that shocking original twist that nobody saw coming, it will always be a hard film to beat, but this film does not disappoint. The twist is just as jaw-dropping as the original, and it ends up taking you on this insane journey that ends in total bloodshed. Like I said, Isabel is fantastic as Esther. There is no other negative reviews or comments that I can really give from my end. I just loved this movie. I have watched a few other reviews on YouTube where it's being said that they thought it was quite hard to really get into this film with not many people to root for, but you know, apart from the dad, of course, but I have to disagree. Yes, you do end up rooting for Esther, but that doesn't make her any less dangerous or creepy, in my opinion. I just think it was great. I forgot to mention that we learned some of the origins of Esther in this movie, like the song that Esther used to sing in the first movie. Well, she got that song from a vinyl player in this movie that she must have really, you know, liked, because she sings it in the next movie. We also learned where Esther got that glow-in-the-dark painting thing from, and it was because of the dad in this family. He ends up showing her how to do it, which of course Esther takes on into the next movie. So all in all, this was a great movie. I've been really excited to watch this one, but I did try and keep my expectations down because, as I've said, I'm not normally a fan of prequels, but this one really knocked it out of the park for me. I just really hope that we now end up getting a sequel from the 2009 movie, because as I've said in one of my previous videos, we don't really know if Esther is really dead. I mean, she could have got out of that frozen lake, and I would love to see what would happen next. And with Isabel actually being an older actress now, there is so much more that they can do with Esther's character. Let me know in the comments box below if you would like to see an Orphan sequel. Maybe it could be called Orphan: The Next Chapter, or The Next Kill, or something along those lines. And let me know if you enjoyed this movie and if the twist shocked you or not. I love reading all of your comments, so get typing. Okay guys, well, we've reached the end of today's video. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, stay safe out there, and I'll see you all again very soon.